Anglo pertaining to England, in this case the lands that would become England, and Saxons were Germanic people who were living in this region at this time, so English-speaking Germans, or Germanics. Middle English came about most likely because of the influences of the Norman conquest, and I'll give you some more details about exactly what this was later. So as you can see already, we have this linear history of England just by looking at the origins of its language, how it developed from this civilization to that, into its own, and the influences from outside cultures. And so for here we can also move on to the second topic, which is what the history of languages can tell us about the culture, what languages can tell about cultures. Clarissa Dickson Wright, a British cook and author, and of Two Fat Ladies fame, that's a cooking show, says that the Anglo-Saxons must have eaten garlic because they gave it the name garlic. Garlic is an Old English word. Gar is the Old English for spear, and liquid relates to the vegetable. The Anglo-Saxons did not name anything that they had no use for. We're not talking about things that they didn't know existed. We're not talking about things that weren't there. If they didn't need it, if they didn't use it, they didn't give it a name. Can you think of anything you've ever seen that was not given a name? Well, if the Old English didn't have a name for it, then the forces from northern France did during the Norman conquest. And that explains why there are so many words in the English vocabulary which have French origins, most likely Old French origins. Old French is actually one of the offshoots of Latin, which is also why many people say that Latin is the mother of Western language, although I tend to say, well, it's not really Latin, it's Germanic, but that's splitting hairs. And for my third point, we're going to go to a more recent past. This is thousands of years ago. We're going to do more about maybe 70 years ago, to talk about efficient communication through different languages, through language barriers. The Catalan-born soprano, Montserrat Caballé, sang for several years at Bremen Opera, the Bremen Opera in Bremen, Germany, where she learned, among other languages, besides her native Catalan, a form of German called Low German. This is the form of German that is spoken in Bremen. So when she made her New York debut with the Metropolitan Opera, she didn't have a common language with most of her colleagues. Well, one of her colleagues was the Jewish-American tenor Richard Tucker. His birth name was Reuben Ticker. According to Tucker's biography, they were able to communicate in a very unique way. She would address him in Low German, and he would answer her in Yiddish. Yiddish is the colloquial language of Ashkenazi Jews, that is, Jews of European ancestry. Both of them have ties with West Germanic. In fact, Yiddish is also related to High German. They both evolved from older forms of High German. It's interesting to note, too, that, well, English also has a common root with them, but she couldn't understand English. Yet, and it's a testament also to both of them, Caballé and Tucker, that they were still able to communicate through these two different languages. So in conclusion, we can see that we have a linear history of English civilization simply by looking at the history of the language. We're able to see, we know that the Anglo-Saxons ate garlic, and we know why so many English words have French origins. And we're able to see how a Catalan soprano and a Jew from Brooklyn were able to communicate during rehearsals for an opera that was going to be performed in yet another language. And my last thought, the last thing I'd like to share with you, as you can probably tell, this is a very incomplete diagram. We haven't talked about the Latin languages, the Celtic languages, the languages that are being spoken in South Asia today. But look at all the information and the history that we were able to get just by starting with one language. So you can imagine the kind of information that you could get just by looking at the whole diagram, which is available, still being provided by the American Heritage Dictionary. Just don't fall into the trap that I did when I tried to come up with this speech, and you just get swamped with all this information. In other words, don't let yourself get tongue-tied. Thank you very much.